I don't know if any of you have ever watched the movie or read the book, The Fellowship of the Ring, the first part in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Well, there's a scene in that movie, in the book, where the hero of the story, Frodo Baggins, is worried about all of the rubbish going on in his world. And he says to the guy that's become something of a mentor to him, you know him, it's Gandalf. And he says these words to Gandalf. Frodo says, "I wish it need not have happened in my time." And man, I don't know if any of you are feeling like that about the coronavirus, the way it's swept across the world, the way we in the UK have found ourselves in lockdown, the way it's impacting families, health, finances, and mental health right across the world right now. Maybe you think like I do, like Frodo, I wish it need not have happened in my time. But you know, Gandalf, he replies to Frodo with these words, and he says, "So do I. And so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us." And I just think that Gandalf is absolutely mic dropping some advice for us right now in the UK during this time of coronavirus. We don't get to decide what happens in our times, but we do get to decide what to do with the time that is given to us. In other words, we cannot choose our circumstances, but we can choose our response to those circumstances. I love these words from the Apostle Paul. We find them in the Bible, my favourite book, even more so than Lord of the Rings. And we find it in the book of Philippians in the Bible and chapter 4. And the Apostle Paul, he says this. He says, "I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in plenty, and I know what it is to be in need. I have learned the secret of being content in every and any situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. And I can do all this through him who gives me strength." The Apostle Paul says, whatever the circumstances in my life, I know how to be content in the middle of them, even if those circumstances aren't good. So I wanted to ask you, how content are you right now? You can't choose the circumstances you're in. It wasn't your choice to get locked down in your home. It was a choice that was made for us. But we can choose our response. How content are we right now? How content are we in lockdown? How content are we that we can't take our exams? How content are we that we can't see our friends and the people that we love the most in the way that we'd like to? How content are we that our usual rhythms and routines, our sports, our youth groups, our churches, we can't participate in the way that we did before? How content are we right now? It's easier said than done, isn't it? But I want to give you 3 top tips, 3 things that I've been learning that I really believe are going to help you to be content in spite of the circumstances as they are right now. And the first one is just so huge, it's just so big, and I wish that everybody watching this would take hold of it. My first top tip for being content right now is that you do not spend time in the morning with your phone before you spend time with Jesus. Did you know that for 90% of us in the UK, the very first thing that we do in the morning is we reach over to our bedside table, we pick up our phone, and we start scrolling. We start scrolling through our Instagram feeds, our Twitter feeds, our Snapchat. We start checking our messages, our notifications, our news feeds, maybe our emails. And that, my friends, is a recipe for discontentment. Because that's how to start off your day with comparison. That's how to start off your day by feeding your anxiety. That's how to start off your day by feeling like you're not good enough and you're not living up to the standard that everybody else is setting. It's not a recipe for peace. It's not a recipe for joy, and it's certainly not a recipe for contentment. Here's a much better way to start your day. Before you go anywhere near your phone, pick up your Bible. Sit down in quiet, read some words, Let God speak into your heart and into your mind. Talk to him. Tell him what you're worried about. Tell him who you're worried about. Pray for him to be with you, and maybe even spend some time just in silence, receiving his love and loving him. Friends, that's a recipe for peace. That's a recipe for joy, and that is a recipe for contentment. So if you want to be content in lockdown, my top tip for you is that you do not spend time in the morning with your phone until you spend time with Jesus. My second top tip for you is this: limit your use of social media. And I want to say particularly those first moments, like we've just talked about, and the last moments of your day are moments when you want to just disengage from your socials. Hey, listen, I've been doing something in my life for a number of years now, which is a little bit crazy, but it really helps me to be content whatever the circumstances. Two things. First thing I do is at least an hour before bed, I don't go anywhere near my social channels. Just gives my mind a chance to rest, to be at peace, to separate from the pressures that we all feel from our socials. And the second thing I do, this one's even crazier, is every single week when I have a day off, I will take a full 24 hours away from my social channels. And I'm telling you, friends, it's so good for my soul. It's so good for my mind. And I would love it if everybody watching would have a go at that. I really believe it's going to be good for you. Hey, just last night as I'm recording this, I was spending some time online with some of our young people in our youth group. And it was Mental Health Awareness Week when we were doing this and when I'm recording this. And so we were talking a little bit about mental health, and we spoke about some of the things that positively impact our mental health. And then I said to them, okay, so guys, what about some of the negative things that impact your mental health? And within a second, I mean, they did not think twice. Both of the young people in my crew, as fast as you like, put up on the chat social media. Didn't even need to think about it. It's the thing that most negatively impacts our mental health. And that's why I'm encouraging you to limit your use of social media, to put some boundaries around that, particularly first thing in the morning, last thing at night, and maybe even for a whole 24-hour period every week, you would limit your social media. Hey, I think that's what you should do. If you, like the Apostle Paul, want to learn to be content whatever the circumstances. So what we're going to do, we're going to not spend time in the morning with our phone before we spend time with Jesus. We're going to limit our use of social media. Hey, these are practical tips, right? And the third and final thing I want to say to you, if you want to be content whatever the circumstances, if like the Apostle Paul, you want to be content in these circumstances even, here's what I want you to do. I want you to build into your life a healthy rhythm of sleep, diet, and exercise. Friends, you know, what we do with our body impacts our soul and it impacts our mind, and we cannot separate those things. And when we're looking after ourselves physically, when we're eating well, it's really going to help our mental health as well, and our sense of contentment and well-being. When we're going to bed at the same time every night and getting up at the same time every morning, even when there's not school and we don't have to, when we're getting enough sleep, regular sleep, and at the same time at night sleep, that makes a huge difference to your well-being. And when we're getting out of the house, especially in this period of lockdown, and we're breathing in the fresh air, we're maybe going for a cycle, we're maybe going for a skateboard, we're maybe going for a run, or playing some basketball, or whatever it is for you. Guys, that just helps so much. All the endorphins kick off, and it brings you that feeling of well-being, and it helps you to be content even in circumstances such as this. Real practical tips, right? But I really believe if you would put these things into your life, then like Paul, you would be able to be content whatever the circumstances. Here's what he says one more time. I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. And then he says this, I can do all this through him who gives me strength. And here's where I want to finish. You need to do the things that you can do, and God will not do the things that you can do for you. So if you're not taking personal responsibility by putting healthy rhythms in your life, like the three I've just described to you, God's not going to do that on your behalf. That's your responsibility. He's given you your body, your mind to steward. You need to do that yourself. But the things that we cannot do, he can do, and he will do when we do the things we can do. So friends, put those things into practice. Don't spend time in the morning with your phone before you spend time with Jesus. Limit your use of social media. Be deliberate and intentional about that. Build healthy rhythms of diet, sleep, and exercise into your life, and then ask God to meet you where you can't bridge that gap. This is the secret of being content in any and every circumstances. We can do all this through him who gives us strength. Guys, God bless you. Stay healthy, stay well, love God, love others, love yourself, and I hope to see you very soon.